I will carry the image of that night until my dying day. The soft glow of the chandeliers, the expensive scent of cedar and aged bourbon, the casual cruelty in my son's eyes. It was at the anniversary dinner we threw for him, surrounded by our dearest friends and his new business partners. David, standing at the head of the table in his custom-tailored suit, raised his glass, not in a toast, but in an abrupt, chilling command. He pointed across the glittering table, his voice flat, devoid of any warmth. "Evelyn, please leave. You're becoming a distraction, and frankly, you're embarrassing the Petersons." The world compressed into a single, agonizing moment. The sound of silverware stopped. Every conversation choked. I remember the weight of my silk shawl and the sudden, overwhelming chill. I rose, my hands steady, refusing to let them see my heart crumble. I walked toward the entrance, but as I passed the ornate fireplace, I caught the reflection in the glass. My husband, Robert Peterson, sitting motionless. His face was pale, his eyes fixed, not on me, but on the door through which I was exiting. He didn't rise. He didn't speak. But in his absolute stillness, I saw something far more terrifying than rage. I saw the gears of the man who built an empire grinding into motion. Robert wasn't going to fight my battle. He was going to end the war. If you believe parents deserve respect, smash that like button. And make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell for tomorrow's story. The humiliation of being cast out of my own sons. How's the house Robert and I had gifted him felt like the end of my life's work. But they mistook my silence for weakness. They mistook Robert's stillness for apathy. What David didn't know was that Robert had a saying from his early days in the steel industry. A gentleman only raises his voice when he has run out of ammunition. I always keep my powder dry. That night, Robert didn't have to raise his voice. He had something far more potent. 40 years of ironclad legal documents. Tomorrow, the frail, quiet man David had dismissed would retrieve the old, scuffed briefcase that held the original deeds, the corporate charters, and the irrevocable trust documents. The foundation of David's comfortable life, built by our hands and secured by law, was about to become his personal guillotine. The price of his arrogance was about to be tallied, not in tears, but in the cold, unyielding language of high finance. I am Evelyn Peterson, and for decades, my identity was synonymous with the name of Peterson Dynamics, a multi-million-dollar industrial automation company. Robert and I started with nothing but a beat-up pickup truck and a loan we thought we'd never repay. Robert was the genius engineer, the visionary who saw the future of manufacturing. I was his indispensable partner, the one who handled the payroll, managed the accounts, and kept the books so clean that the IRS sent us Christmas cards. Every penny was reinvested, every comfort postponed. All for our only son, David. We instilled in him ambition, confidence, and a world-class education. 5 years ago, when Robert's triple bypass surgery slowed him down, we passed the CEO title and the majority of the non-voting shares to David. It was an act of love, a handover of legacy. David, bright and aggressive, grew the company further. But the title gave him an unwarranted sense of omnipotence. He began referring to us, his parents, and the founders, as legacy overhead. The house, the cars, the prestigious country club membership, it all became my assets. The tension was a constant, low-frequency hum. The clash between Robert's old-school value of loyalty and David's new world worship of profit. David's disrespect wasn't a sudden storm. It was a slow, toxic leak. It started with small things. Ignoring my calls, canceling our routine Sunday brunch, correcting Robert's business anecdotes in front of junior partners. Then came the major offenses. He sold Robert's vintage workshop, the birthplace of Peterson dynamics, without consulting him, calling it unnecessary real estate. He even had the audacity to change the name on the main holding company, from Robert Peterson and Son to the David Peterson Group. Every time I'd object, he'd give that condescending smile and say, "Mom, you just don't understand modern business. This isn't the 70s anymore." I confided in Robert, but his energy was low. His eyes showed the deep-seated pain of watching his son dismantle their history. Yet he rarely confronted David directly, choosing instead a weary silence. "He's young, Evelyn. He has to learn. Maybe the pressure is too much," he'd rationalize. But I knew the truth. We had shielded David from every single struggle, ensuring his path was paved with gold. We taught him how to win, but never how to be grateful. The pressure didn't change him. It simply revealed him. He saw us not as mentors or parents, but as relics sold money to be managed, not respected. His wife, Susan, a woman entirely defined by status, only amplified the problem. She began inviting us only to highly visible, public events, where our presence was a necessary prop for the family image, not a welcome addition. This final act, throwing me out in front of the city's elite, was David's ultimate attempt to rebrand his family history, cutting the embarrassing, old ties once and for all. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window in the cold silence of our empty home. When the early morning light filtered through the blinds, Robert came downstairs. He looked older, tired, but his eyes were sharp, the eyes of the man I married who faced down banks and unions. He didn't speak of my humiliation. He didn't have to. He walked straight to the mahogany cabinet, pulled out a key, and unlocked the hidden safe. From it, he retrieved the old, worn, black attaché case, the one he'd carried during the company's crucial founding years. Inside lay the documents: the Peterson Family Revocable Trust, the operating agreement of Peterson Dynamics, and the original shareholders' charter. He laid them out on the antique dining table, the same table where David learned to do his homework. Robert spoke, his voice low and gravelly. "The house is a gift." The position was a loan. He mistook both for ownership. He picked up the phone and dialed a secure line. "Mr. Thompson," he said to our family solicitor, a man who had been with us since before David was born, "I need an immediate meeting. Bring the revised trust documents we drafted 5 years ago." "Yes, the ones detailing the moral authority clause. I'm invoking it." David crossed the line last night. It's time for the legal cleanup. The moral authority clause, a little-known provision Robert, ever the planner, had insisted on, stipulated that executive control of the company could be instantly revoked and reverted to the founders if the current CEO was deemed to have acted in a manner that brought significant moral or reputational detriment to the Peterson name or the company. It was a fail-safe we'd forgotten about, but Robert hadn't. Thompson, recognizing the gravity in Robert's tone, arrived within the hour, briefcase in hand. He laid out the documents, and Robert, with the cold precision of an engineer, began his instructions. "Effective immediately, Thompson. David is stripped of his class of voting shares. Transfer them to Evelyn and me. Cancel all his signatory rights on the operating account. Furthermore, I want a notarized letter delivered to his office by 3 p.m., informing him that the executive lease on his primary residence, the house he threw his mother out of, is being terminated. Effective 30 days. As Mr. Thompson prepared the legal transfers, I sat beside Robert, my heart steady. It wasn't about spite. It was about balance. David had used his financial power to inflict emotional pain. Robert was using his legal power to restore emotional dignity. The irony was exquisite. David, the man who prided himself on modern business, was about to be undone by a dusty clause from a 30-year-old trust document. Robert signed his name with a firm, steady hand. He paused, looking at the final document, the termination of executive authority, before sliding it to me. "This is your signature, Evelyn," he said quietly. "You were the one humiliated. Your signature makes this correction complete." I picked up the pen. My name, Evelyn Peterson, appeared bold and clear next to Robert's. It felt like signing my own emancipation. Mr. Thompson collected the thick stack of papers, copies for the corporate registry, the bank, and the final, damning notice for David. He promised to file everything immediately with the utmost discretion. "The documentation will be active before the closing bell on Wall Street," Mr. Thompson confirmed. "He won't know until the bank freezes his access tomorrow morning." Robert simply nodded, watching the solicitor leave with the documents that represented David's entire world. We had not yelled, not threatened, and not even spoken to David. We simply let the law do the talking. The next morning, David would wake up to his usual arrogance, unaware that he was already standing on air. The revelation came not at the lunch table, but at David's pristine corner office. Robert had instructed Mr. Thompson to deliver the final notice during David's daily management meeting. The following morning, Robert and I sat at home, quietly sipping our coffee. At 10:15 a.m., Robert's phone rang. It was David's corporate financial controller, panic audible in his voice. "Mr. Peterson, there's an issue with the operating capital. Every single wire transfer, domestic and international, is being rejected. The bank's corporate access code is disabled. They say the signatory authority has been completely revoked." Robert responded with the coolness of a seasoned chess player. "The bank is correct, Mr. Miller. My wife, Evelyn, and I have officially resumed full operational control of Peterson Dynamics. Please inform my son, Mr. David Peterson, that he may continue reporting to work, but only as a salaried employee. His executive privileges are terminated. All financial decisions now revert to the founders." He hung up the phone before the controller could respond. 15 minutes later, David burst through our front door, unannounced, his face a horrifying mask of crimson rage and sheer panic. He wasn't wearing his custom suit. He looked disheveled, frantic. "Dad, what the hell is going on? My accounts are frozen. The company's entire cash flow is locked down. Is this some kind of sick joke?" Robert, seated in his armchair, lowered his newspaper slowly. He didn't rise. He didn't shout. He simply looked at his son, the man who had demanded his mother leave with a clinical detachment. That cut deeper than any yell. "It is not a joke, David. It is the moral authority clause of the family trust. You have been deemed to have acted in a manner that brings severe reputational detriment to the Peterson name. I have legally and irrevocably stripped you of all executive authority and financial control." David staggered back. The money he had spent, the power he had wielded, the status that defined him, it had all evaporated in less than 24 hours. He lunged for Robert's arm. "You old fool. I built this. I modernized it. You're sick. You can't legally do this." Robert pulled his arm away calmly. "The paperwork was filed yesterday, signed by both your mother and myself. It is done. You are an employee, David. You are nothing more." David turned on me, his eyes burning with a desperate, animal hatred. This is your petty revenge, you jealous old woman. You convinced him. You couldn't stand to see me succeed without you. I finally stood up. I walked slowly toward him, no longer the weeping mother, but the co-signer of his destruction. My voice was steady, clear, and cold. Jealous, David. I was there when your father couldn't afford shoes. I kept the books when he worked 16 hours a day. I sold my engagement ring to pay your first year's tuition. You were not a self-made man. You were a spoiled beneficiary. And when you commanded me to leave my own house, the house Robert and I worked for, you forfeited your right to every penny, every title, every comfort we gave you. I paused, looking him directly in the eye. This is not revenge. It is an act of self-defense. We are defending our name from your arrogance. You humiliated your mother in public. I have now signed the document that ends your reign. The debt is paid. He stood there, mouth agape, the realization finally sinking in. The one person he thought he could always control, the loving, forgiving mother, had delivered the killing blow. He looked back at Robert, who simply nodded once. The finality of the situation crushed him. He was defeated, not by a lawsuit, but by a signature. He turned and stumbled out of the house, his frantic footsteps echoing the desperate flight of a man who had suddenly lost his entire identity. David's wife, Susan, filed for divorce within the month. She had married the CEO, not the salaried employee. David was left with nothing but his debt, his pride, and a severe reduction in income. Robert and I slowly settled back into our roles. Robert, energized by the clear-headedness of the confrontation, took over strategic planning. I resumed control of the finances, ensuring that every dollar was accounted for. The tension in our lives evaporated, replaced by the profound, quiet peace of control restored. We reinstated David's annual salary enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly, with the condition that he must reapply for any position in the company and report to a new, younger manager. It was a lifeline that required humility. Robert often says to me now, we taught him the difference between a legacy and an inheritance. Evelyn, a legacy is earned through respect. An inheritance is just money. I look at the old attaché case now, not as a symbol of our wealth, but of the strength of our partnership. We were old, yes, and perhaps frail, but we were the foundation. And we had successfully demonstrated that the power of an empire doesn't lie in the hands of the arrogant young, but in the unwavering will of the quiet old ones who hold the deeds. The most powerful act of justice is always delivered with silent efficiency. Was Robert's use of the moral authority clause justified, or was it too harsh? Comment below and share your opinion. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story of family secrets and silent hearts.